4 days on comes the overwhelming grief. An enormous landslide slamming the village of Yambali in remote Papua New Guinea. Friends, families, loved ones, farewell those lost. Among the mourning, Miok Michael.
My aunties, my cousins, 5 of my cousins are buried. I lost around, within my tribe, my clansmate, it's total of about 19 people. And yeah, I'm really speechless here. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's a natural disaster that killed a lot of my family.
The landslide in Enga province, northwest of the capital Port Moresby, happened while many slept around 3 a.m. This satellite image shows the before and after. Homes and buildings, simple wood structures, stood no chance.
It's really heartbreaking to describe what had happened, and people are still crying for help. The survivors are still crying for help. It's almost 4 days now. Today makes 4 days, and their bodies are still buried, and it's really a sad scenario. It has never happened in the history of the province, and it's the first time. I mean, such a landslide has never happened. It's really hard to describe it.
Initial UN estimates put the death toll at more than 670, but PNG's disaster agency says it believes more than 2,000 people have been buried alive.
The houses are buried. The hundreds of houses are still buried, and they have no proper house to sleep. They're calling for food supply. Slowly the food supply is going in.
So far, only 6 bodies have been recovered. So they don't actually know the final death toll.
Some aid agencies are struggling to access the site. The first excavator reportedly to arrive was donated by a local builder. Care International is planning to send a team later this week.
The other complicating factors are that the ground is still moving, so it makes it very difficult for rescuers to get in. And then yesterday, one of the bridges along the highway collapsed. So that further restricts relief efforts getting into the affected area. The village would be a normal rural village in PNG. It would be full of life. There would be a lot of young people, a lot of children running around. People would be busy doing their gardening. It would be a lively community where everyone knew everyone else.
In Australia, members of the PNG community are mobilising support, even as some grieve relatives. Egai Latham is still trying to work out how many she lost.
In Guinea, our kinship is very strong. We've got family members that I automatically knew were involved. So I was like, oh my gosh, what can I do? I was actually really impacted from this, and I couldn't sleep. What's going through my mind right now is just displaced children, displaced families.
But there's anger too at the PNG government. Egai says it's been too slow to act.
This is something that's really hurting. I mean, not to see people getting the help that they really need from government. That is the really bad thing that sort of as it's just, yeah, I'm just lost of words. There's about 8 or 6 meters of dirt. People are using spades and hands and whatnot, like uncoordinated emergency response. This is a joke.
Back in PNG, Miok Michael says the land at Yambali is unstable and fears another disaster.
They need more than that. They need proper resettlement. Their people, they need to sleep in a good house and to mourn for their people, the people that are buried by the landslide. So I'm calling on authorities who have the heart for the people, please support us.
The Australian government has committed an initial aid package of $2.5 million and is sending a specialised team to PNG tomorrow. Pat Conroy is Minister for International Development and the Pacific. Pat Conroy, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you very much.
Now, what's the latest you've heard from PNG? Have you had any updates during the day today?
I've had limited updates during the day, but truthfully, information is quite limited at the moment. The site is very inaccessible. Helicopters are the primary way of reaching the site at the moment, so information is scarce. The best estimation from local agencies is that at least 150 homes have been wiped out, and the death toll so far has been speculated of somewhere between 700 and perhaps 2,000.
Now, obviously, we've seen people desperately with their hands trying to reach people who are trapped. What are the prospects for getting machinery there that will enable that job to be done properly?
Well, some will be able to be transported by helicopters. The rest will rely on the roads being cleared. We have transported PNG emergency officials up via aircraft to Mount Hagen Airport and then helicopter to the site. We've got a C-17 transporting emergency assistance to Port Moresby tomorrow that will then transport it through Spartans and Hercules aircraft to Mount Hagen, and then the rest will be done by helicopters. So until we get the roads cleared, heavy equipment will be very hard to get up there.
And I think you're sending technical expertise along with, you've already obviously committed money. What will that technical expertise consist of?
A team of 16 in the Disaster Assistance Response Team is in country this evening. It's got three groups. It's got representatives from Queensland Fire and Rescue. It's got Department of Foreign Affairs officials and National Emergency Management Agency officials. It will have technical assistance around geohazards, incident control. They'll also be equipped with drones to map the site and identify, quite frankly at this stage, more likely to be bodies rather than people living, but those drones will be very valuable in obviously mapping the site. So that's the initial assistance team, and we stand ready to move and build on the $2.5 million of assistance we've also provided. We've also transported 750 family-sized shelters because obviously there's hundreds of people displaced at the moment around Mulitaka.
And what do we know about the conditions, the geological conditions? Is the area around those villages in that province actually stable now?
My advice is it's not, and that the level of soil and mud covering the villages is 6 to 8 metres deep. So there's extreme hazard there. That's why that disaster assistance response team is so critical. They're used to working with geologically unstable conditions, often in urban areas with collapsed buildings, and the drones will be critical. But we're moving as fast as we can, and we're also prepared to transport teams from other countries who've offered assistance.
And what else do you think Australia will be able to offer in the days ahead? After this first team goes in, what do you anticipate will be our follow-up?
Well, to some extent, we'll be guided by the conditions there and their advice. But I think more shelter will be required. Food and water and sanitation is critical to the survivors, and then supporting lift of heavy equipment through ADF helicopters and aircraft is obviously critical. And the ADF has been mobilised from early on Saturday to do that task. So I think it'll be a combination of all those factors, as well as increased financial assistance to humanitarian partners such as Red Cross to drive on-the-ground support.
So that's on top of the $2.5 million that Australia's already committed?
Well, we're ready to provide more if it's requested. The $2.5 million was our initial assistance. That's on top of the $630 million of aid we provide to PNG each year.
And for those people who've been injured, who have survived but are injured, do you know where they're going to be taken? Where's the nearest place that field hospitals can actually be set up?
I'm not aware of the exact details, but there are a number of field hospitals in the province and further afield, Mount Hagen, which is where we're basing the planes to then move the equipment onto helicopters, is a large highlands city, so that it has medical facilities as well.
The Prime Minister, of course, was in the country not very long ago. Have you spoken to him since this happened?
Not directly on this. Obviously, I had many conversations since his return from Papua New Guinea about how that went and our support for Papua New Guinea. I've been to PNG 6 times in the last 16 months. It is our closest neighbour and one of our greatest friends, and I'm horrified by what's occurred. And I was exchanging messages with senior ministers of the Papua New Guinean government only this afternoon, where they thanked us for their support, and I was very clear that we stand ready to provide whatever they need once they make those assessments.
Now, we understand there are some complexities in PNG politics going on right now. Is that going to hinder the relief effort?
Well, I'm not in a position to commentate on the domestic politics in Papua New Guinea. That would be inappropriate. All I can say is communications has been very clear and direct. Within hours of the tragedy occurring, our High Commissioner had talked to both Prime Minister Marape and the Governor of Enga Province. We've been in regular contact with the PNG Defence Force and the emergency management officials leading at a provincial and national level, and that communications is going very well. As I said, I communicated with senior ministers this evening, and I know Penny Wong and Richard Miles have also communicated with their counterparts. So it's strong, and we'll work really closely together to get the people of PNG through this tragedy.
And did you send personal messages, or were these all official messages?
I sent personal messages, and I know, well, I would imagine the other ministers have directly communicated rather than through official channels.
And what did you all say?
I expressed, obviously, my condolences and just heartfelt regrets about what has occurred, and was very clear that we stand ready to support PNG just as they've supported us both in recent bushfires and floods, but obviously through the darkest days of World War II. So I spent a lot of time with Papua New Guinean ministers, and our relationship is very close, and we really stand ready to provide whatever assistance they deem necessary.
I just want to move on to ask you a question about Gaza. The Foreign Minister said today that Israel's strikes on Rafah had, quote, horrific and unacceptable consequences. What is it about this particular attack that's caused the government, that's caused the Foreign Minister to use such strong language?
Well, I personally was appalled by what occurred. It is horrific. We've been consistent in urging and requesting the government of Israel not to conduct an offensive in Rafah, where half of the Palestinian, or half of the 2.3 million Gaza population is residing at the moment. So I think it's the nature of the attack. We've called on Israel to refrain from attacking Rafah. We've called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, for the release of all the hostages by Hamas, and immediate access for urgent humanitarian assistance. And that call can only go louder after the images overnight.
Just tell me about those images. What is it particularly about this attack that's causing you to use the language you're using?
Well, to be frank, images of refugee tents on fire is particularly stark. There's no other way around it. I'm horrified by it. We again urge Israel not to conduct offensive operations in Rafah. We urge Hamas to stop using civilians as human shields and to release all hostages, and we call for an urgent humanitarian ceasefire.
Pat Conroy, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening.
Thank you.